Hello everyone. In this tutorial video, I'm going to explain and discuss the following topics: how to access XML data and display dynamically the data using Ajax, JQuery, and HTML div element. I will be discussing also the JQuery find function, as well as this CORS or the cross-origin resource sharing issue. So these topics will be discussed in this video, but before that, please support the channel by clicking on the subscribe button and hit also the notification bell so that you will be notified with all the new videos that I'm going to upload in this channel. And so, like I said, in this tutorial video, I'm going to explain how to access XML data, like for example, this XML data that we have right now here. And then we will display the data dynamically using Ajax, JQuery, HTML div element. I have a separate video where I discuss there how you will display dynamically a content using jQuery and HTML div element. That video is this one here. Okay, you can find this thumbnail in this channel, wherein, like I said, it discussed how to design a dynamic web page or web pages using jQuery and div. I was able to discuss there also what is jQuery and the DOM. And I suggest that you have to watch this video first so that you will have a better understanding of what we are discussing here. We have here an XML file and the content will be something like this. What we will do is we will get all this data or some of the data, and then we will display the data dynamically in a web page. So we will be using here Ajax, jQuery, and HTML div. Let's start off with HTML file. Okay, so I'm going to put in the other view my XML. I'm going to have, or I have already here my HTML file. And so, like I said, if you have watched my video about dynamic content using div and jQuery, so you will be familiar with what I have right now here. And so if you will start hard coding, definitely you will start with HTML followed by head, after which it will be followed by the body. Okay, again, this file is saved as .html file. Inside the head element, you will declare here the jQuery library. Okay, so you have to specify where that jQuery can be found. Then followed by your script again here, wherein inside this script, you have to declare your document ready function to initialize all your jQuery statements as well as some JavaScript coding or codes. All right. And so in the body, I'm going to use a div here to display the data. So in short, we will use this section, or this is the section we will use to display our XML data. Okay, so if you try to imagine it, we have something like a page, all right, and then there will be a section here, and it's called name and ID. That's the div, that's the section. So we will have a section somewhere here. All right, so it's going to be like that. So I'm just going to call the div as name and ID. So it's a simple page. Our goal is just to display, let's start off with S name, all right, or the student name, and ID. So one element data, and we will also display the attribute data. So let's make it simple like that first. So we will get the data here and display dynamically those data, ID and the name. Each time or every time you would like to access this XML data, you need this what we call Ajax. Ajax stands for asynchronous, JavaScript, and XML. So take note of the name there, XML. So this Ajax is a new technique for creating better, faster, and more interactive web applications with the help of XML, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So meaning to say, if you combine all these web designing tools, you can create an interactive web application or web pages or simply dynamic web pages, better and faster. So how this Ajax will work? In the background, so something like there is what we call XML HTTP request. This XML HTTP request simply means that there is connectivity, always connection. There is always a connection between your web page and the web server. That's why it's called asynchronous. Okay? It means it can communicate with the server, exchange data, and update the page without having to refresh the page. Okay, so again, basically it's a communication API wherein it connects to the server without having to refresh the page. Basic syntax for the Ajax is simply this one here. Okay, so I'm just going to copy this and I'm just going to paste it here. Okay, we don't have any other requirements, so I'm just going to put it immediately after our document ready. Of course, if you have some other requirements or the problem requires you to do other things before accessing the XML data, then you can put those codes here. But because we don't have any other things to do, so immediately I'm just going to put my Ajax right over here. The Ajax have 5 parameters. Okay, so we have here the type, the URL, data type, success, as well as the error function. So again, they are parameters, or these are parameters, so they are separated by comma. As you can see, we have a comma here. So this is the first parameter, type, get. Okay, so this is always get because we're trying to get some data. No, I mean, we're trying to connect to a certain XML in the server. All right, so the method that we're going to use is get. Okay, so that's the first parameter. So the second parameter, again, parameters are separated by comma. So the second parameter is the URL. So you have to type URL, something like this. And then after which, you have to specify the name of the XML. In this case, the name of our XML is data. Right, as you can see here. My data XML, in this example, my data XML and this example1.html, they are stored in one folder together with the JQuery folder. So these 3 files are there, right? So here again, line number 10, you have to specify the name of your XML file. It should be enclosed in single quotes or single code, all right? So the next is the data type. Since we are accessing XML file, so the data type will be XML. Okay, so the next one is a function, and that is the success function. This must be there, right? So again, this is the 4th parameter. Okay, so again, each parameter are separated by comma. So, okay, so this is the 4th parameter. So the success function. Now, what are you going to put inside the success function? It's a function. So you have to place here all your codes in getting the data. This XML data here. Okay, the problem itself, the solution to the problem, the code that you need to have in order for you to solve the problem. So you have to put all those here, starting from line 13, and you can adjust. Okay, so you just have to add all those codes here. And then the last one, although this one is optional, right? The last parameter is the error function. Here, if this will only trigger, this error function here will only trigger if there is a problem when accessing the XML file. So your code here will trigger. So let's just make it simple as something like, if there is a problem when accessing our XML, we will just be displaying alert error. So we will be using JavaScript function alert, okay, to display a dialog box, and it will display error so that we will be aware that there is something wrong with the connectivity or connection, or when connecting to our server. So it's going to be like that. Okay, alert error here. Okay, of course you can customize it to error messaging that you want, but let's just make it simple like this. Okay, again, this one here can be omitted, or it's optional. If you don't like to have an error function, it's possible. So you will have only 4 parameters: the type, the URL, the data type, and the success. All right, but it will be better if it is there so that we will be aware. You will be aware if there is an error. All right, so when accessing the file, or when there is communication problem with the XML file, okay, between your HTML and the web server. Okay, so that's the meaning of that. Now, should you remove that error function, you just have to make sure that including the comma there. So it will be like this. All right, so if it is there, then you have to make sure that it's complete, something like this. So 5 parameters. Okay, now let's go back to the success. In the success function here, you have here a letter A here. This is a variable actually. Okay, so since it's a variable, so it's up to you as a programmer or the designer of the page. It's up to you whatever variable name you wish to put here. But for me, I will just use A as variable. So what is this A? This A will hold, the purpose of this, or the function of this A here, will hold all the data of data.xml. So in essence, when the data.xml is loaded, it's already retrieved by the web page. It is already retrieved. Okay, remember, it will communicate with the web server. So once the data are retrieved or were retrieved, what will happen is that this A will hold all the data of data.xml. Meaning to say, the value of A is all of this now. All of the data of your XML, that will be the value of A now. All right, so it will be in the memory. So it will only get the data once. After getting the data once, then it will store all those data in the variable A. So that's basically the purpose of the A there. Okay, so I hope that was very clear to you. Let's continue. Now, inside the success function, okay, there's no other thing that we will do but to get the data, right? So there's no other thing. Let's make it simple. Okay, our example is just, our program is just very simple. What we want to do is just very simple, and that is to get the name and the ID. As simple as that. We will just display those data here dynamically. All right, so here it is. I need something like a loop statement, and so here it is. So I will just be placing that one here. Okay, so it's going to be like that. Okay, so here it is. So I need a loop statement so that I can get all the data. Okay, so what we want is, we want to get all the names starting from this first record here, Juan de la Cruz, Simon Paul, and then the last one will be Oscar Jackson. We want to get all this. So I need a loop to get all this data. So I'm going to use this .find function, .each function. All right, so .find, .each function. Okay, the syntax is simply .find and then element name. The element name that I want to find is the stud info. We will look for all the info element, each stud info, because in each stud info, there we can find, or there we can retrieve the name Juan de la Cruz and the ID, attribute ID. So for each stud info, basically that is what is meant by this statement here. So, okay, so to get each stud info. All right, so that's how it is. Again, look at the A there. So the A means it refers to all of this XML file, all the data, right? That's the meaning of the A there. Okay. Now, how do we get now the data? So inside the loop, let's get the data. So I need something like this. If you will get the element value, okay, in this case, we want to get sname here. We want to get the sname here. So I'm just going to say something like this. There you go. So $this that find element name that text. The element name is sname. All right. That's how there is. And for the attribute value, we will use this one here. Okay. So basically, they are just the same. Just that you have to use that attr function. So the attribute name is ID and the element name is sname. Okay, ID is an attribute of sname. So we have to specify sname and then the attribute ID. This is how we get it. Okay, if you wish now, we can put it in a separate variable. Let's call it as sname. All right. Then the other one, let's call it as ID. So it went like this now. Okay, I'm going to save it first. Control S. So there you go. So it will be something like this. Now, how do we display this? Okay, to display this, it can be something like this. There are many ways how to display this. Okay, or at the end of the loop, how do we display this? So there are many ways. All right. To make it simple, after we get the data, we can display it, or we can display those data, or these two data. Okay, after getting the data, right now, okay, right now we are pointed here. All right, the point, something like there is a pointer. So we are now pointed here, first loop. Okay. In the first loop, first time in the loop, so it will get this sname here. So meaning to say the value of the sname and the value of the ID is 1 and the sname is Juan de la Cruz. So how can we display this? No? So that's the next question. So it is possible in this case, because we just wanted to display this data, we can immediately display this one now dynamically if we wish to. No? So another way is by finishing first the loop and then we will display. It's also possible like that. But in this case, let's immediately display. Okay. So remember again, we will display the data in our section here. It's called div ID name and ID. Okay. That's the ID name and ID. So we will display these two data here in this section here. Okay, dynamically. Of course, you can have another div. So, but anyway, so we'll be using this div here. So I'm going to say, remember our function for adding a content here or placing a content here, and that is the $. Again, we will go back to our basic syntax of jQuery. $, open parentheses, double quote, sharp sign, name, and ID. There you go. It is already here, so I'm just going to select that, close, that, append, open, and close, semicolon. So we will append here, let's say sname, okay, and then I will just say plus, okay, I'm just going to say something like this, and then I'm just going to say the ID. Okay, so if you try to look at our code now, it will be something like this. So I'm displaying the sname plus this character here with space before and after the minus sign or this hyphen sign here, and DIV. After that, it will go to line 17, and because this is a loop statement and there are two more records, so it will go now to line 13 to get the next record, which is this one here. So this time, the value of DS name is this record here, Simon Paul, and the DID is 2. And we are displaying those data now here. So let's try to save and test it. So hopefully it will work. So a simple program, something like this. So let's see. Again, I'm going to use this, what we call Firefox browser. All right, so again, I'm just going to open my folder here, and this is the file. So I'm just going to run it. All right, I'm going to click and drag right over here and release. Okay, so I think we have an error. Okay, so we have an error here. Okay, so I'm going to click OK. Why we have an error? Okay, there is nothing, it doesn't say the mistake or error, but we have an error. Okay, if we press the F12, function key number 12, okay, we will see now the errors. You make sure that you have to click the console tab here to show the errors here. So right now we have this, what we call cross-origin request block. Okay, cross-origin resource sharing problem. This is actually a course problem. Okay, so that's the reason why. But again, before I go to that error, so if you will look at our program, our Ajax here, it went here, right? There was a problem here, somewhere here. So because there is a problem, so it showed this alert error function here. It did not come, or it did not execute all the statements here. Because if there is no problem here, communication problem with the server, okay, so it will go here inside the success function. But because there is an error, so it went here. All right, so those are the functions of these two functions here, success and the error function. Okay, so that's the reason why we have an error here. I'm just going to refresh it. I just refresh it and then see this error here. So the error here, course origin resource sharing problem. So there is no problem with our code, but we have a problem here in our browser. Okay, these course issue are actually in all the browsers. No? But I will not discuss how to solve this course problem with other browsers. So we will just be focusing on how to solve this course issue, CORS issue, or the course issue, using the Firefox software. Because for other browsers, there are different solutions for this problem here, the course problem, this one here. All right, so we're dealing now with this course issue, cross-origin resource sharing problem. Using Firefox, it's very easy to solve this course issue problem. That's why I choose Firefox as our browser to run our dynamic page. Okay, so how do we solve this one here? If you have an older version of Firefox, the solution will be this one here. You just have to find for this settings here. Okay, privacy.file _unique _origin. You just have to make it false. By default, all right, by default, when you run your Firefox for the first time after you installed it, by default, these settings are set to true. Okay, so we have to change those to false, okay, so that our program will run. So basically what we want, what we are doing here is that we will not allow course course origin resource sharing issue to block our program. So an example of cross-origin request problem is this one here. So a front-end JavaScript code served this one here uses this one here to make a request to this one here, data.json. So you see, the original request is just simply a web page. And then there will be a request for another file, and that is the data.json file. All right. So in our case, it is XML file. So that is where the problem is. Okay. So for security reasons, browsers restrict cross-origin HTTP requests initiated from scripts. This is the problem. jQuery is a script. So that's the reason why we have this, what we call cross-origin request block, because we are accessing XML file. Okay, so something like a separate file. Okay, so to solve this, what we can do now is simply, okay, we have to go to the settings here, okay, and okay, here. All right, so we have to type here about :config, and this will show. Okay, so you just have to accept the risk and continue. Like I said, in all other browsers, or I mean in other browsers, there will be a different way of solving the course issue. Okay, so here, it's also different in Firefox. Okay, so all we need to do is to find for this one here, privacy.file _unique _origin. Okay, this setting here, privacy.file, you just have to type privacy.file and immediately you will see it. Okay, as you can see, it's already false. However, what happened is that in the old version of Firefox, this is the only one that you have to find. Okay, you just have to set it to false. By default, it is true. Okay, so how do we change the value? So we just have to click this one here, it will become true. If you click here, it will become false. So it should be false. Okay, so this is the setting that you need to find for older version of Firefox. However, for the newer version of Firefox, okay, there is another one that you need to change the value from true to false. So again, this one is for old version of Firefox. So you have to test this one first. Okay, so test this one first. If it is not working, then the second one is the setting that we need to change. So security.file URI, this one here. So if we come here, security.file URI. No? So as you can see, I did not finish typing it. So it is here. It is showing already here. So again, the default is true. Okay, so you just have to change it to false by clicking here or double click this line here, this highlighted line here. This is the one that we're trying to change. So double click it again, we'll make it false. And then that's it. Okay, so if this is not working, your program is still not working despite changing it to false, definitely your browser is a new browser or the updated one, no? I mean the latest one. So definitely the security.file URI, this policy here will work by changing it to false. No? So there you go, it's already false. So after that, that's automatically saved. All you need to do is to close it, and this time you just have to refresh your file now. So it should be working right now. There you go. So no more errors now. So our records, okay, our records are now displayed. So again, one more time here. There you go. All right. I'm going to press F12 so that we will have a full screen here, right here. Okay, so these are our records now. This is our database here, or our XML, and the data are already displayed. And if you will look at our, okay, I'm just going to, and if you will look at our program here, and it's like this. Okay, so there you go. Simple as this. Okay, so there you go. Of course, if you want to display the data one row after the other, so I guess we can have something like here plus, and then you just have to say BR here. And if you refresh now, there you go. Okay, so this is our code here, right here. Okay, so I hope that was so I hope that is very clear to you, this coding here that we have, or the code that we have right now here. Okay, so very simply, just simply display inside the div, okay, as you can see here, inside the div, dynamically all the S name and the ID from our XML file. Okay, now there are many ways, no? There are many solutions in displaying the data inside a section or in a div. In this case, after getting the data, we immediately append. Okay, so sometimes we don't like to do that. What we want is we want to get all the data first, and after getting all the data, that's the time we will append. Okay, so another solution to this is something like this. So I'm just going to copy this. Okay, so I'm going to create a new one. I'm going to save it as something like okay, so I'm going to save it as something like all types here. So I'm going to save it as example2.html, and I'm going to save it as something like that. So we have two now, XML1 and XML2. So in example2, sorry, example2.html. So what we want now here is we want to display the data, all the data, once after the loop. Okay, after the loop, because what we have right now is after we get the data, okay, we immediately append the data in our section. All right, the div. So this time we will get all the data first and we will append once. Okay, so right after the loop. So therefore, it will be here, right? So just going to I'm just going to get this one here and place it here. Basically, it's like that, but it's not like this, no? So what we will do is, I think I need a variable here. All right, so let's say var is equal to okay. So the idea is that I'm going to create a variable. It's called txt. Okay, and then after which all the data that I will get from the XML, I'm going to place all those in this variable txt, and then the variable txt is the one that I'm going to display, or I'm going to append in our div or our section. All right, so it's something like that. So what will happen is, after getting the data, I'm just going to say something like txt is equal to txt. So it's concatenation something plus, I'm going to say, I think this one here, and I'm going to paste it there, semicolon. So after getting the data, I'm going to place the data in a variable txt. Then I'm going to get the next data, or the two data, ds name and did, and I'm going to place again these two data together with the first data. All right, the ds name and the did. So until all the data are retrieved. Okay, so after the loop, So all I need to do is to say append txt. So like this. Let's try now. It should have the same result, right? Okay, so I need to change the name of the file here. So I'm just going to say example2.html. Again, it's like this. So I'm going to press the enter. So it will be, or it will have the same result, right? Or the same output, as you can see. But the difference is that, again, I'm going to move this. Okay, so on the left is the example1 HTML, and on the right is the example2.html. So basically, that's the difference between the two. In here, after we get the data, we display. In here, after we get the data, we assign the data in a variable, and then we get the next data. So the value of txt will keep on increasing. All right. So using concatenation technique, and after the loop, that's the time we will display the value of txt, which means the value of txt is or are the data that we retrieve. So it's like this. Okay, so that's another way. Okay, now this example 2. Okay, the reason why I introduced this kind of getting the data and placing at once after the loop is that sometimes we will display the data not something like this, but you will display the data in a tabular format. Okay, in a tabular format or table. If that is the case, then I think this is more better. Example number 2 is more better. Okay, the idea or the concept of example 2 is more better than example number 1. Okay, so this time let's have another file. Control A. I'm going to copy this. Okay, I'm just going to save this. I'm going to save this as that example3.html. Okay, so I'm going to save it as all types. Save. So example 3. I have an example 3 now here. All right, so what we will do here is we will display the data in tabular format this time. Okay, so because in example 1 and in example 2, data are just simply displayed one after the other, or one row after the other. Okay, or one row at a time. So one record per row, something like that. So next, what we will do is we will display the data in tabular format. So we will have something like first column for our name and second column for our ID. So something like this. Okay, and then we can also have some headers. Okay, so the first column, the header will be name, and then the second column we will say ID. All right, so we will have headers, and then we will have columns and rows for our 3 records. Okay, so that's what we want to do. Again, using the same concept that we use in number 2, example number 2. So since we need a header, so definitely I need something like this time I'm going to say, again, I'm going to put everything in one variable, and it's called txt. I will put everything there, including the headers, including table, the tr, and the td. Okay, so I'm going to put everything in one variable. It's called txt. After getting also the data and placing those data in each column, okay, after we do all those things, after all those loopings, after getting all those data, then we will display the same thing. We will display here. Okay, one time only, or something like at once only, and using that variable txt. So everything will be in variable txt. So here, obviously, I need something like okay, a table, okay, border equal 1, so that we will see. Oops, I'm going to use single quote, by the way, because I'm using already double quote, okay, outside this HTML tag table. So inside will be single quote, right? So width, let's call it width let's call it about, let's say 40% of the screen, and semicolon here. I'm just going to copy this, and I will just paste it here before we append, so that we can terminate our table or end our table here. Okay, so definitely, okay, I think I missed something like this here. Also here, txt is equal to txt plus this table slash table here. All right. So obviously we need more. So something like txt is equal to txt, this time for the row. So I need something like tr here. There you go. I need to end this slash there. Also, I need a td slash td. So again, our first column will be the student name. So something like this. For the second column, we can say id. So something like this. So this is our header now. All in one variable. We will display all this in one variable, and that is the txt. Okay, so I'm going to save. So now we have the header. How about our data? So here it is, inside the loop. So inside the loop, after getting the data, so I'm going to display the data in a column. So in the first column, it will be the student name. So I think I'm going to say something like, okay, oops. So I'm going to say here, okay, so I think I need the tr first before that. So tr first here. I will just copy that one, and I will end it here, slash tr, right? So in the middle, okay, in the middle of tr and slash tr, that will be td, okay, plus the ds name, plus this time I'm going to use slash td, right? So that will be the, so that will be the first column. On the second column, I think I will just need to copy this, right? Paste it there, right? So something like this, td, and then this one will be the id, right? Something like that. So I don't need this anymore. So it will be something like this now. All right. So it will go to 27 after getting the first record, and it will come back to line 20 to get the next record. All right. And then the data of the second record will be placed again to the first column and to the second column. And so it will continue until the end of the record. So once no more records, it will go outside the loop. It will go to line 28, and it will end the table. And finally, we can now display our data. Let's try and save. So I'm going to save. Okay, I'm going to run here, right? So you can also do something like this. Example 3 here now. Click and drag right over here. Oops, we don't have it. Why? Let's see. Okay, so again, this is an opportunity for you to correct it. So I'm just going to maximize it. I'm going to press F12 so that I will have an idea what is the mistake. So there you go. Okay. Again, since you have an error here, okay, it tells you the error here. So how do you look for the error? So here's the error. This one, by the way, the second one, you don't need to find for the error here. This is just normal error here. This will be displayed even if you don't have an error. So this is our first concern here. It will be, you can see here 15 and 13. So look for 15. This is row 15, no? So string literal. That's the problem. So 15. Where's my 15? Oh, okay. I'm sorry about this. So there you go there. I forgot my plus here. Guess I'm too excited about it. There you go. So when we save now, all right, so txt is equal to txt plus this string. That's the meaning of that, right? Variable is equal to variable plus this string. So also here, I think I have a plus here. All right, plus here. So I guess That's the mistake that I have, and we have corrected it. So finally, it will become like this. All right. So that's how you check for your error. Again, you press F12. Okay. It's because the error messages will not be displayed unless you press the F12, and make sure you click on the console. Okay. And then you just have to check for the line number, in this case line 15, and so it's like that. All right. So I'm going to refresh now. We already corrected it. If there are more errors, we will see and we will correct. So I'm going to refresh now. All right. I think there is no more errors, or no more errors. So that's it. So this is what we want. This is the output that we want. So it's like this. Okay. So this is our code now here. All right. So this is how you get the data, okay, from an XML file using Ajax, JQuery, and the HTML div. Okay, so it display the data dynamically using those three: the JQuery, the Ajax, and the div element. We were able to display the data dynamically from, of course, the data came from an XML file. Okay, so I hope you were able to understand, or you understand what we have, or I have discussed here. If you have comment about or suggestion about our code here, if you have a better solution, I would gladly hear from you by having your comment, or by writing your comment down below. Put your comments down below. Okay. And if you like this video, you were able to increase your knowledge about XML and HTML, how to display dynamic data using HTML, jQuery, div, and Ajax. Please like the video, and I'll see you on my next video. Thank you very much for watching.